Dr. Kirk Cameron and conservative children's book publishers Brave Books called upon people to come out in libraries across the country for a national event on August 5th entitled See You at the Library, wherein routinely neglected worldviews by today's libraries might be asserted and begin to reclaim America's information centers from drag queen story hours and the one-sided far leftist propaganda that has been recently consuming our public institutions. Reportedly, libraries across 46 states hosted this event, sometimes against library efforts at censorship, towards the celebration of traditional values, celebrated by a people despised by lobbying groups like the American Library Association, which schemed behind the scenes to attempt to silence this portion of the American populace. I took my camera to the See You at the Library event closest to me, at the public library in Camp Verde, Arizona. And this is what I found.
So, a lot of you guys may already know the undertone of what's going on. If you don't, or if you want to know more, come and find one of us. Talk to us. Say, what can I do? I've seen this in my community. I've taken my kids over here, and then I can't take them over there anymore. What do I do?
My husband Steve and I hosted this event today, See You at the Library. We are concerned for our town. We believe that there is a push for inappropriate books towards children, specifically in this library, but in libraries all over Arizona. And we wanted to do something that we felt represents the town and something good for the children of this town.
I would frame Camp Verde as a Western heritage, agriculturally active, God-fearing, God-loving town. I would absolutely say that Camp Verde is conservative.
Absolutely.
I wanted to acknowledge a really special guest stand-up that we have here today, Madam Mayor Dee Jenkins, and I just wanted you guys to
I was one of the first people to notice the Pride display for the month of June. It was called Read with Pride. Had it been an all-adult book display, I wouldn't have thought twice. What adults do is their own decision. That's between them and God, and I have no judgment for that. But what caught my eye were the children's books on the same display. We had children's books that were perfectly clean, like for 2-year-olds, next to a book called Doing It. And the entire cover of that book, I should have brought it, is the cover is covered in the title, and the title goes on to talk about orgasming, sexual pleasure, really lewd content. So I called the library and I spoke to our library director, and I didn't ask her to remove the books. I didn't tell her to do anything, but I tried to ask her if she saw why having those books, and that's just one example, those 2 books, those books side by side on that display might be a good idea. And I did advise her that the community would not take well to it. She actually told me she hadn't seen the display and she didn't know what was on it. And I was looking at a photo of it, our library director, top dog. And so I was looking at a photo of it because they posted it to Instagram. So I said, well, let me just read this to you real quick. And she had no answers for me. She was defensive. Nothing really came of that conversation. That's why it was so short and sweet. And I was just like, okay, well, have a good day, because I was asking her, do you see the problem with this? And the conversation was a 5-minute conversation. It didn't last long and not much was achieved. But parents in the community noticed, and it took off like a wildfire. And thanks to social media, we brought a lot of awareness to it. So we've taken this problem to our library management. So far, we've had no resolution to the issue. They ultimately moved the Pride display from the bottom floor of the lobby, where you had to walk past it to go to the children's section, upstairs. So compromise maybe, but not good enough.
I went out of town and I get a call from another mom, and I find out that there's a Pride display in the library. And I know that it's Pride Month, and I'm like, okay, well, that's a national thing now. And then we learned that there's children's books mixed in with adult books, as well as adult films on the racks, and they're located right in front of the children's library. There's no distinguishing characteristics that, will show you these books are for children and these books are not. In fact, they're on the same shelf right next to each other, many of them. And I thought that that was egregious, and I found out there's laws against that. Arizona Statute 13, I think it's 3506 and 3507. Both speak to harmful content, but also distributing, lending. I mean, it's almost like they wrote it specifically for libraries.
So the display was the tip of the iceberg. We started to look into all the titles in the children and young adult library and discovered that the contents of our library are lewd, they're pornographic, they are misleading, they are harmful, and we're fighting for that. So we took this problem to our library management, and there's been no resolution. We've taken this to our town council, and later this month there will be a town council meeting specifically to address these issues, but yet these books sit on the shelf.
I need the biggest library cheer. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yeah! We might get kicked out. All right.
We had a discovery. We pointed out a problem. We're asking for resolution. So we decided to insert a resolution as well, to plant a seed amongst the youth of our community that the way they are born is perfect and that God created them how they're supposed to be, and to not taint their mentality. We want them to know that they're loved and that they're perfect just as they are.
You know, I know that I looked up the catalog of LGBTQ plus content. There's about 64 books. I think where we need to see improvement is balance in subject matter. We don't have balance in subject matter. Everything is pro.
A real select few individuals in the town definitely have given us some resistance, but it's been very clear that that is such a small minority of this town, and they're, you know, it's almost like starting a fight just to start a fight, right? I was asked if we would allow for Satanists and atheists and Muslims and Islamic people to be part of this event, and I said absolutely, the more the merrier. We're open to anyone.
It's not just the books that are encouraging children to transition, but it's also the sexual content of the books that really encourage a very loose morality around sex and sexual content at a super young age. These kids are not ready to bear the weight of that information.
We want to encourage children to read books that are going to build them up. We want to have libraries that support our community and the values we hold.
I personally have actually truly petitioned to not ban the books. Don't remove them. If a parent wants to push that ideology onto their child, that is their God-given right, and I would never personally condone it. But the resolution I've proposed, pull those books from the general children's library and the general young adults library and put them in a separate section, so that the majority of children who want to remain innocent and who have the right to remain innocent don't stumble upon them. But the people that are after that information, they should have access to it. There is a middle ground to be met.
And if you want to have a satanic cult meeting in the library, you are welcome also to do so. That is the wonderful thing about our country. There is no discrimination saying Christianity is better than Satanism or Buddhism or anything. And we're all supposed to be tolerant of the fact that we have these freedoms and we practice them.
Man, I am so, I'm just speechless with everybody here. I don't know how it happened. But I mean, God is alive. Is he not?
I don't expect people to convert to our religion or stand shoulder to shoulder with our religion because we do this, but it is not a religious ask of society to not push sex, and especially tainted sex, onto children. That should be a general morality issue, no matter if you're religious or if you're not.
Being a bird is tough. I thought it'd be easy. It's rougher than rough. Frankly, not breezy. There's one more thing to test if it's true. I'll jump and then fly like most birdies do.
I recognize there's value. There's people of all different kinds of backgrounds, and we really need to enable those books to be, read or accessed. But I believe that there's specific ages where we're blocking content for pornography online through the firewalls in the library, but yet we're not restricting books. There's no rating system for books. There's rating systems for films. There's rating systems in place for every other kind of media.
I got peace, joy, love, like a river, mountain bouncing. I got peace, joy, love in my soul, my soul. I got peace, love, joy, like a river, mountain bouncing. I got peace, love, joy in my soul.
We've never ever had a notion to ban books, okay? We don't believe in banning books, but when we're talking about sexually explicit material geared towards children, material about mutilating one's genitalia, having surgeries, using the opposite bathroom of their assigned at birth gender, when we talk about books like that geared towards children, we believe, my personal beliefs of whether I think the books should exist or not, that doesn't matter. That's my personal belief. But what we can do is ask, hey, at the very least, these books need to be in a strictly monitored 18 and over section and not accessible to children, to minors.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Prior to the library display, and really this whole issue, I was an independent contractor for social media services with the town of Camp Verde. And after I called the librarian, Kathy Hellman, we had a decent conversation. I'm sure she was uncomfortable because she was being questioned, but I was really calm and I was asking questions. I wasn't making demands. After that phone call, the person that I worked with directly in the town of Camp Verde asked me to come in for a meeting on a day that we never meet. And I thought, benefit of the doubt, that's not about the library call. How could it be? Nothing happened. I didn't go in for the meeting, and instead I elected a phone call with that person, and I recorded that phone call. And that person told me that nothing on that display was sexual because there wasn't pictures. He told me I was wrong for calling, that I abused my position, that I intimidated and intimidated and threatened our librarian, and absolutely accosted me of wrongdoing. And I asked, did you listen to the call? He says, no. I said, was the call recorded? He says, no. So I point out to him that he's accusing me, judge and jury, from hearsay. And he was gaslighting me. He maintained that I did something wrong. So I told him, you know what, sir? We don't need to work together anymore. And I quit my job. It was lucrative. It was an opportunity. It opened up a lot of other opportunities to me. And he told me, after accusing me adamantly, he told me, you wouldn't quit, essentially, if you hadn't done something wrong. And I would like to let you know that individual, I took this to town management. He was formally investigated. That individual, as of August 1st, individually seeking other opportunities. There is nothing to fear when you are fighting for the right thing. There is nothing to fear if you are protecting the innocent and the vulnerable. If you're afraid of your friends looking the other way, they aren't your friends. If you're afraid of losing your job, you were not meant to be in that job. There is a higher calling than any other amount of money or social status. There is a higher calling to protecting the innocent and the vulnerable, whether they're children or innocent and vulnerable adults as well, or teenagers. There is a much higher calling to do that than there will ever be in a job or in a social circle. There is no negative consequence to doing what's right.
God bless America, my